Hi. Thank you. Once again, I'm Samantha Wilson I'm a data scientist at Power Factors on the advanced analytics team. And today I'm going to talk to you about the derivation and applications of filtered temperature corrected performance ratio for diagnosis of underperforming power plants. All right, how do I switch this? There we go. During this presentation, I'd like to focus on a few areas. Starting with an overview of power factors in the Drive platform. Next, I'll introduce the filter temperature corrected performance ratio, or FTCPR, including a comparison to other KPIs, filters, data quality, events, and then applications of FTCPR, including degraded classification, soiling derate characterization, wash optimization, DC health assessments, and benchmarking. So at Power Factors, our mission is to develop software that accelerates the global energy transition by empowering renewable energy owners and managers to collaborate, automate workflows, and make better decisions. It's a growing company with about 200 gigawatts in managed assets under solar, wind, storage, and hydro. We have around 500 employees globally and hundreds of customers, as well as 10 global offices throughout the Americas, Asia, and Europe. The Power Factors portfolio contains an array of applications for any customer profile. The most recent product is Unity. So Unity focuses on real-time monitoring and directly controlling power plant assets through the application. Next are Drive and Greenbright, which are asset performance management tools. We also have Drive O&M. Drive O&M helps coordinate actions on site. It's focused on scheduling maintenance and recording on-site observations. Bluepoint is commercial asset management software. It's primarily for asset managers and compliance managers and focuses on product management and financial reporting. We're also working towards an integrated platform that combines all these tools into one application. So this talk will focus on the performance management platform Drive. Drive focuses on providing customers with easy access to all their data. One of the primary functions is real-time data validation, storage, and cleaning. It provides built-in dashboards and visualizations for event management, and portfolio performance analysis. And it can also provide prescriptive recommendations for improving site performance. So in order for Drive to provide performance insights, we need a robust, flexible KPI for analysis. So we focus on something we call the filter temperature corrected performance ratio. So we consider filtering the most important part of that formula. So I'll introduce the FTCPR with comparison to other KPIs. Then I'll go into the filters for removing low quality measured data, removing events like DC outages and inverter outages, and removing shade, and then I'll get into the formula. So filter temperature corrected performance ratio is an ideal plant performance KPI because it's not sensitive to data quality issues. It's not sensitive to temporary events like shade, inverter outages, clipping. It really captures the performance of the DC array, and it has minimal seasonal variation. So at the right is a comparison of several basic KPIs. First is performance ratio. Performance ratio is always a good starting point when analyzing a plant, but it's quite variable annually due to temperature changes, as can be seen by the green data points. From there, we looked at temperature corrected performance ratio, also called weather corrected performance ratio, as described in this publication cited below by Deeroff. You can see there's a big improvement in consistency across time. There's also some months like July where you can see a big dip in performance. So this is where the filtering comes in. Now, it should be clear here that we're specifically looking for a KPI that captures performance of the DC field. So this is not going to capture overall plant performance. It's going to specifically avoid many issues like inverter availability or grid curtailment. We do have KPIs that focus on total plant performance and outages, but this KPI is really for DC performance. So once these intervals are removed, you can see the data gets even flatter in the blue data points. So this makes it an ideal KPI for diagnosing possible DC field underperformance issues like soiling or snow. So I'll get into the details of that later. So here's an in-depth look at some of the quality issues that get filtered out. So this calculation uses irradiance, POA, module temperature, and AC power. So these values are generally measured on site, but they can be calculated if on-site measurements are not available. So all the time series that we use in this calculation are put through the same data quality filters. Some of the issues captured are shown at right. So filters check for issues like missing data, flat lines, constant slope, implausible jumps of data, and data outside a reasonable range. Data is also always checked against a satellite reference. So metadata required for the calculation is also verified to be within a reasonable range. And once filters are applied, all invalid intervals are removed from the data set. So after the data is assessed for quality, we check for simple logic-based events, clipping, subinterval clipping are filtered based on inverter metadata. Outages are flagged by looking for power below a certain threshold. So the images below show this process. So all the plots show one inverter's AC power versus temperature corrected nominal power. Events are classified. So the event-free data is blue, low angle event sense is yellow, outages are orange, and clipping is green. So the final plot shows the nice linear event-free data. So once we've filtered for data quality and basic events, we then filter data for shade. I think we've seen a couple versions of this today, but shade impacts are widespread on inverters within our portfolio. We estimate that 10% of inverters are profoundly impacted by shade, another 10% are somewhat impacted. So the first filter is a basic 2D calculation to catch row to row shade based on ground coverage ratio. However, we found that the ground coverage ratio is a difficult parameter to get from customers. It's missing from a lot of sites. Additionally, row to row shade calculations aren't going to capture shade from obstructions like tree lines or buildings. So the first plot shows the impact of a nearby tree line on inverter AC power. Thus, we have another method for filtering out shade based on looking for clusters of low-performing sun positions. So to do this, we first establish what we call the inverter twin. This is an algorithm that learns the linear unobstructed response of the inverter. So it takes the actual power versus temperature corrected nominal power and finds the slope and range of the linear data. Once the linear data is identified, data outside that range is marked as anomalous. So you can see this on the plot. Kind of the nice linear data is marked in blue, and the lower shade curve is green. So that's being filtered as anomalous. So all shade intervals should be flagged as anomalous. So once we have anomalous intervals, we filter them for events and clear sky periods. So clear sky is filtered according to the citation from Reno et al. Below. It's using the implementation in PVLib. Then we identify clusters of anomalous intervals by sun position using a k-nearest neighbors and a clustering algorithm. So an example of anomalous cluster is shown in green. So this is already filtered. So we've removed a lot of the noise from cloudiness. So all positions that fall, and then we fit it with a polygon. So all sun positions that fall within the green polygon that's wrapping this anomalous cluster are filtered from the filtered temperature performance ratio. So a full polygon for this calculation requires at least 6 months of historical data. More data is generally better. So as we collect more data, the shade filter gets better. So then we calculate the actual temperature corrected performance ratio. This calculation relies on a small set of time series and metadata listed here. We generally recommend directly measurements, as I said before. Then we calculate the temperature adjusted nominal power according to the citation from Deroff, and then generally we sum the values over a day. And we filter the intervals excluded from the sum. So once we calculated FTCPR at the daily level, we can use it for several applications. So FTCPR is the starting point for most of our performance analysis work. So one application is a machine learning algorithm we call our degraded classifier that classifies inverter days into one of several categories, including normal performance, DC outage, tracker outage, snow, or degraded unknown. We also use FTCPR for soiling D-rate analysis, wash data optimization, comparison of before and after DC health improvements, and benchmarking. So degraded classification is a supervised machine learning multi-class ensemble classification model based primarily on FTCPR with about 70 features. It's a tree-based classification model. So the majority of those features are different lagging FTCPR values like FTCPR over the previous 7 days, historical slopes and averages. It also includes some weather-based features like precipitation, KPIs from the combiner level data. Data can be classified as normal and plausible, incomplete, in case we remove too many data points with filtering, or degraded. So degraded categories include soiling, DC outage, combiner outage, tracker outage, snow, or unknown. When we mark something as unknown, it is a statistically significant D-rate, but the classifier generally can't classify it with confidence. So once the days are labeled, we can generate the events and allocate lost energy accordingly. And the objective here is not only to label and identify degraded performance, but also to assign a root cause, so recoverable energy can be identified. And this algorithm runs at the end of every day to generate a classification for that day. So this is a collection of plots showing daily historical FTCPR colored by the classification assigned. The yellow line shows the average FTCPR for the entire site. Each bar is FTCPR for a single inverter for a single day. The colors are unfortunately a little similar, but they show how each day has been classified. So the first plot shows the days classified as degraded snow. So days that are normal performance are in the darker blue, degraded snow is the lighter blue. And this plot shows the typical FTCPR shaped snow losses. Snow events typically start with low performance or even outages on the day of actual snow, followed by slow recovery back up to normal performance over the course of a few days to a week. The classifier uses features based on both FTCPR and precipitation to help identify snow loss. The next plot shows a combiner outage. Combiner outages look like sudden sharp drops in FTCPR. You can see that the classifier has identified all the initial days as normal performance, then the inverter drops suddenly versus the plan average, and this is classified as degraded unknown. After a couple of days, the classifier gains confidence that this is a combiner outage and switches the classification from unknown to combiner. All right, the next plot shows soiling. The inverter starts off classified as normal. Then as soiling increases, it gets classified as soiling. Then it looks like there's a wash and classification goes back to normal. Then soiling accelerates again until a rain event at the end of the soiling season when classification returns to normal. The final plot is a tracker outage. Tracker outages and combiner outages can look very similar at the daily inverter level. The main difference would be that for tracker outages, performance tends to be noisier and occasionally goes all the way back to normal due to variance in the diffuse fraction of irradiance. On very cloudy days, the transposition gain is generally so low that performance for a stalled tracker looks normal. Because tracker and combiner outages can be difficult to separate using just FTCPR, we have additional KPIs based on the shape of combiner data that can help separate the two. And so the shape of combiner data is compared to different clear sky profiles to determine if the combiner is on a stalled tracker. So this is an overview of all the degraded classification results we have for our fleet. So the degraded classifier has now been running on all inverters in Drive for several years. This gives us a very interesting data set. We've classified about 14.6 million inverter days so far and found about 81% of days are classified as normal. The second biggest category is degraded unknown, followed by soiling, snow, and DC outages, which includes both tracker and combiner outages. On the upper plot, you can see the distribution of FTCPR for these categories. Snow days have the lowest FTCPR by far, with a mean of 46.4%. The distribution of DC outage and degraded unknown is pretty similar, with means around 68%. Finally, there's soiling with a mean of 81%, and normal operations had a mean of 87%. We also estimated the power loss for these categories over the entire portfolio. Snow and degraded unknown represent the bigger power losses right now, with soiling and DC outage being much smaller contributors. We're working on improving the degraded classifier continuously, focusing on breaking down the degraded unknown category. We're also working on improving classifier sensitivity to DC health issues like strings offline. Currently, an entire combiner has to go down for it to classify as a combiner outage, but there are a lot of times when the degraded unknown is just a large number of string outages. So many degraded unknown events are also when you get things like soiling and combiner outages at the same time. Classifier can't place them in a single category with confidence. So we're working on updating it to classify multiple events at once. So once you're on the classifier, we can then take the classified days of soiling and characterize the shape of the FTCPR for soiling derate. So this is based on the stochastic rate and recovery method previously described in the paper by DeSegli et al. The main difference is we use an additional monthly degree of freedom to help characterize changes in the soiling rate over time. The plot below shows several years of historical FTCPR with normal operation days in green and soiling in blue. So soiling intervals are then fit for the estimated soiling rate. And as you can see in this plot, soiling patterns can be very consistent year to year. So once we have the classification of historical soiling D rate, we can use that on a wash optimization. One of the most common questions we get from customers is, should I wash now? Generally, if FTCPR shows no signs of soiling, a wash is unlikely to improve performance, even if panels look visually soiled. We've not studied this in depth, but anecdotally from talking to customers, most are doing too much washing and washing at the wrong time. So following a KPI like FTCPR can help give customers confidence in when to wash. So at the right is an example of a customer wash when there's little change in FTCPR, and as expected, results in no perceptible gain. So the left is an example of a well-timed wash. Site was clearly in a soiling regime based on the shape of FTCPR, and as expected, performance returned to normal operations after the wash. So once Drive has at least 1 year of historical soiling characterization, we can generate a wash optimization for a site. So this requires information on the economics of the plant. So and washing as well as historical precipitation data. Most plants within Drive that have soil have a seasonal soiling pattern and are washed clean by precipitation after the dry season. So after taking in historical soiling and precipitation data, we get the plot in the upper right corner. So this shows a mean wash profit, which increases as soiling rates increase and then decreases as the chance of rain increases. So the y-axis shows the expected profit from the wash, which is a little hard to see, but most days have a negative expected profit. So optimal wash days in California are often around early September to late August, and there's often not a sharp peak. So the other thing to note is the risk of a negative profit. In general, washing in California is very expensive. So the expected negative return in the scenario due to the odds of an earlier than expected rain are about 25%. And the later in the season, the larger the risk of a negative return. So another application of FDCPR is quantifying the impact of maintenance work. So one example is fixing strings offline and blown fuses. So to the left is a plot of DC current data collected from a number of combiners for a single plant. Combiners often have a variable number of strings, making automated DC health inspections slightly difficult. So Drive could take metadata or learn string ratings to estimate the number of strings offline per combiner. So this data can be used to help target maintenance work. So we did a case study with a customer to adjust DC health inspections to focus both on higher revenue inverters and combiners with larger numbers of strings offline. With no shift in personnel, FDCPR at all sites investigated significantly improved, especially in high revenue inverters, where it improved nearly 4 absolute %. So the plot at the left shows all the inverters ranked by FDCPR. Blue are the initial values before we started the case study, red are the final values, and the squares are the higher revenue inverters. So after targeted maintenance actions by the site operators, improvement in FDCPR is clear. For this collection of sites, it was estimated that changes in maintenance priority resulted in an additional $150,000 in revenue for the asset manager. So another application of FDCPR is benchmarking. So FDCPR can use to benchmark performance across a number of factors, including plant commission date, manufacturer, model for all assets, including models and inverters, location, degraded classification state, et cetera. This allows you to check performance both globally and against peers. For example, this is a comparison of fixed tilt and HSAT arrays. The global distribution of FDCPR is shown in the black line. So HSAT has a slightly lower FDCPR than fixed tilt. This is probably due to additional losses caused by tracker outages, although we haven't investigated it. So benchmarking is an area of active analysis, and we're working with our customers to derive useful analysis from both individual portfolios and our global data set. So I'd like to conclude today by restating that the daily filter temperature corrected performance ratio is the main performance KPI used by Drive. And we believe the key component here is both the temperature correction to reduce seasonality and the robust filtering to remove data quality issues, events, and shade. FDCPR then feeds into our machine learning classification, soiling analysis, wash optimization, DC health analysis, and benchmarking. So most of the work presented here is being continuously improved upon, particularly the machine learning classifier and the benchmarking. We're hoping to add multiple daily categorizations to the classifier, as well as increased sensitivity to smaller DC outages. So thank you for your time. Once again, my name is Samantha Wilson. This is my email at Power Factors if anyone would like to reach out offline with any questions.